Welcome to How to Decorate from Ballard Designs, a weekly podcast all about the trials and triumphs of decorating and redecorating your home. I'm Caroline, I'm on the marketing team.
And I'm Taryn, and I'm a product designer.
I'm Liz, I head up the creative team.
We're your hosts. Join the expert team at Ballard Designs for tips, tricks, and tales from interior designers, stylists, and other talents in the design world.
Plus, we'll answer your decorating dilemmas at the end of each episode.
We love answering your questions, so don't forget to email us at podcast@ballarddesigns.net.
Now, on with the show.
Today, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome a truly iconic British designer to the show. Our guest is Steven Rodel, creative director at one of the UK's most esteemed design practices, Guy Goodfellow. Known for his deep knowledge of historic interiors, an impeccable eye for art and antiques, and a talent for creating homes that feel layered, lived in, and beautifully evolved, Steven brings a distinctly British perspective that so many of our listeners admire. With experience working alongside some of the most respected names in the industry, and just having completed a renovation of a flat in London on his own, Steven has the rare ability to balance heritage with comfort and elegance with ease. Steven, we're so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Well, many thanks for having me. That was a lovely introduction, so thank you.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your passion for design, your history, and how you got involved with Guy Goodfellow.
Well, I think that, it all started when I was much younger with a sort of a keen interest to sort of just about visit every country house, National Trust country house in the country, which my sort of great aunt and family would have to take me around. And actually, when I was at school, I did a sort of, some volunteering work for the National Trust. So that sort of, how those houses evolved and how they were put together, that really interested me. I then went to do history of art and architectural history at university, but always sort of in the back of my mind wanting or being interested in interior design, but sort of felt that that was a good way to sort of come or to sort of go and study at a very academic level, and it would give me a good sort of foundation. And then I sort of found myself in London thinking that I would actually pursue a life in arts and museums, and then sort of found myself at Harrods on a sort of graduate program, and that sort of then I found myself in all of the sort of design, furniture, antiques departments, 20 years ago almost. And that sort of gave me a great grounding for then moving on, then to go and work for an interior design sort of brand. Then I worked for a private office, and then I met Guy. Well, I actually met Guy about 15 years ago, but we sort of always knew of each other through sort of mutual acquaintances and the industry that is so sort of small in London. And we sort of learned that we were frequently working on, neighboring houses. So, he was working on sort of, one road in London, I was working on the next, or he was working on one house in the Caribbean on a beach and I was working on the next house. So it felt almost serendipitous, really, that we sort of came together through a sort of mutual meeting, and he explained and shared with me what he was looking for out of a sort of creative director role, and it really spoke to me. It really felt like the correct thing to do. We sort of have, I don't want to say that we always agree, but we do sort of view the world through the same lens. We have the same interests and the same sort of belief systems. System sounds kind of static, but we commonly agree, and it's a great partnership.
That's so wonderful. So, I mean, the Guy Goodfellow aesthetic is so rooted in history and tradition, and I feel like your sensibility that you bring to the work that I've seen seems to follow along with that, but still has a freshness and a lasting timelessness to it. I'm wondering how do you do that? And just break it down for us.
How do we do it? Well, we always start with the bones of the building. We always start with the architecture. Guy's an architect, so he will and we will sort of look at plans and really try to get that all right in the beginning. Because actually, if you get the bones right, then everything else sort of falls into place. Not afterwards, because it's a sort of it's a sort of collegiate way of working. But if you get that right and the architecture's correct and the rooms are balanced and they function and they work, then the rest is sort of interior design and decoration, which sort of evolves over time. It's never static. And things can sort of be swapped in and out. And I think this sort of timelessness that we strive to create is through a sort of, I'm not sure there's really a formula. It's more of a feeling, if that sort of makes sense. So this sort of layered, evolved, sort of, comfortable accumulation of design. It just evolves, and it seems correct, if that makes any sort of sense.
No, totally. It's so amazing to see these rooms that do feel like they've evolved over time. But then, I mean, clearly they're projects that you've put together. So there's right.
Yeah, and it never looks like yesterday. That is
Right.
what Liz is getting at.
Okay,
It's
so
like,
so I guess they're all about being deeply personal. I mean, that's what's really important in any of this, is just to try and create homes that are deeply personal to the people that live in them, that are sort of biographical in a way. They tell a story. They tell a narrative. They sort of feel lived in. They sort of respond to all of the sort of the character and the personality traits, the interests, the sort of curiosities that those people have. And I guess it's our job as the interior designers to sort of tease that out, to really understand it, because you want to create something that feels genuinely reflective of the people that live in them.
yeah,
Because otherwise you're just creating something that doesn't really have much substance.
right.
Right.
Well, yeah, and we're really good at that here, I feel. I mean, like in general, we make these layered, in general, America, we have a lot more new builds. My assumption, this is assuming. I'm sure, again, you work in all sorts of places, but compared to what you are rooted in, which again is this very English layered look, we are very good about going to the store down the street and buying the display and coming home and plopping it down and calling it a day. That depth of character that it takes, again, years to build and collect, and you're doing it in one sweep, it feels like.
Well,
but
no, sorry,
yeah,
go on.
so no, break that down. I want you to be like, no, you're wrong.
I'm not sure that we are doing it in what I mean,
Okay.
there are certain projects that you're governed by a period, you're governed
Okay.
by an install date. You
Yep.
go through design development, you go through that with the client, you estimate it, you sort of put everything into procurement. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge to sort of get them in. But I do think that with a lot of our projects, there is the opportunity to sort of revisit. There's the
Okay.
opportunity to sort of pause and take thought that I haven't quite found the right commode for the left-hand side of the fireplace in the whatever room. And so rather than if you explain to your client that you're looking for the piece, and it's not a sort of, it's not forgotten about. Again, it's this narrative, it's this idea of really only trying to find the very best. And sometimes the best just takes a long time. Sometimes you're looking for some time. And so it's not that I'm saying our projects have gaps. They don't. We adhere to a sort of we adhere to an installation date.
Mhm.
But sometimes you are afforded the great sort of luxury of being able to take a little longer.
Mhm.
Or, I've got a client that I'm working with at the moment, a wonderful client of mine, based in America actually. But we did an apartment for them in London, and it was a very quick turnaround. And I'm reminded of this because I went there today, and we had, I think it was about 14 months to do the whole thing, and it was pretty intense, but we did it. They had very fine furniture that was part of their collection, which we incorporated, and and it was done. They moved in, and then I sort of didn't hear from them for about 9 months, and then they finally came to London, and it was only in this time that they were staying in their London apartment in January that I think even they felt they had just moved in. So even
Mhm.
though it was nearly a year later, suddenly, they started to respond and think about things that perhaps they hadn't thought about in the beginning. And we're sort of now doing a little mini phase in
Mhm.
finding better pieces or finding something different, or
Mhm.
you've lived with something for a short period of time, so you just feel that you want to change it out. um, and that's really nice. I feel that a lot of our clients here, they they don't just sort of, you don't install and then leave.
Okay.
They're clients for life. And sometimes you've worked on the same projects, a number of times.
Mhm.
So they're sort of always there. And when you can find the right piece, I know, having, I might be at an art fair in London or something and think about a client, and even though we're not sort of working for them at the moment, say, well, do you like this? This would be wonderful for this room, or I've seen this really impressive piece. Um, and they love that because that really is the natural evolution of those rooms. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a really roundabout way is that, um, yes, they do come together quite quickly, and they do sort of, um, give this feeling, or this legitimate feeling of feeling sort of deeply personal, lived in, evolved over time. But sometimes it actually does take time to
Yeah.
legitimately do it.
I think I'm sure, Liz, you're gonna say the same thing. There's so much value in hearing you say that because,
Mm.
again, we talk about expectations and we just expect, when we have so much visual coming in all the time that we expect it to be done. I think there's that whole, like, if I just get this one last piece, it'll be done and I'll be set and it'll be good to go, and it's not always the case, and I think
And
that's beautiful.
I think it's about explaining that to the client.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We had a client recently, and they're new clients to us, and they have this wonderful townhouse in London. And I think that they were a little hesitant because we had sort of presented an entire scheme for this house, and we have been design developing it, in tandem with the architect. And I think they thought that the entire thing would come together, and they would sort of just almost sign off on one document, and
Yeah.
that would be it. And then they would move in. And I had to explain that it's pretty much impossible to do that. And if we did do it, then the integrity of the design and the pieces wouldn't correlate, because we would be having to source or commission things that, um, that were sort of quick wins,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
don't want to do that here.
Versus what you
Yeah.
really
We want to
wanted.
make life really
Mhm.
tricky
Mhm.
for ourselves.
Yes, you wanna make your job harder, but
Yeah.
the final result more beautiful.
Well, I think we do make life harder because what we want to create, as I say, by creating homes that are deeply personal and they're sort of biographical, if you like,
Mhm.
it means that you're constantly having to rewrite the blueprint. It's not like I can take, you know, something that I've done before. I can take elements of it.
Mhm.
We obviously have elements of our sort of house style that we like to, um, you know, um, to use again and again, but you're never creating the same thing, which means you're always going through the sort of the prototyping phase, the phase that is not tried and tested, and that is difficult. but it's because we want it to be deeply personal.
Well, and I think that there's something about this too that we don't really talk about with our listeners as much, is that it sounds to me like your clients are always on your mind, and that relationship doesn't end, right?
Yeah, well, you're always seeing things and you're thinking, oh, well,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful for this client, or I'll send this information to them. I mean, I think it's also because we put our clients front and center. In a world that is saturated by interior designers, it's really important to, to put your clients at the center of your world. They're busy people, and, you want to retain them as a client, and you want to garner trust. And, Guy and I and the team here, we're forever thinking, I mean, I'm not sure I ever really switch off come the weekend. I mean, like, it's
Right.
because that's what we
Yes.
love what we're doing. We all do, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is so remarkable about the rooms that you all make is that they never feel showy. They feel a bit more quiet and comfortable, and always accessible. Like you could just step right into the picture and just have a conversation on the sofas and just relax for the afternoon and read.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is really pulling that together in so many of the rooms that you're pulling together?
I really like the idea that you use this, sort of relaxed, like invites conversation. That's how I always sort of think about rooms, as a sort of conversation. I want them to feel sort of lived in, never pristine. I hate sort of walking into anywhere that you feel that you can't, put something down that feels too precious, feels like you can't sit on a sofa because somebody's going to come along and plump the cushions. And that's not to say that it's disorderly. It's just, I think it sort of makes, when something is sort of lived in and relaxed feeling, even with great pieces of furniture, even in a really beautiful, sort of very grand room, it's all about how you sort of, I guess, how you humanize something. And the idea of, the sofas being rather deep and generous, somewhere that you can sort of curl up, the fabrics not being so precious. So the idea that, dogs that have just been outside just sort of jump onto and sort of be okay. I was staying at a friend's of mine in Norfolk this weekend, and what they do so brilliantly, and he's he's a great decorator, is that nothing is precious. And, my dog is out on the lawn, sort of scuffing the lawn, and sort of, ran in, and I'm, trying to get him off the sofa, and actually he's just like so
Screaming.
relaxed about it. He's just like, it doesn't matter. I really like that sort of lack of sort of pretension. Guy always talks about sort of, mixing rich and poor. So when you have a very sort of rich looking fabric, to then contrast it with something that's much poorer. So if you had on a pair of, beautiful elbow chairs, a more formal, fabric on the front, a damask or something sort of much traditional, then to maybe put on the reverse something that just felt drier and poorer. And I think that's a really good way of sort of bringing down the room, to make everything just feel more comfortable and less sort of ostentatious. Yeah.
And no, I agree. That's a beautiful way to look at it, and good to remember too of friends, right? Visiting someone's home, you do want to be able to be relaxed and not uptight because you've just paid whatever and you're anxious about anyone using the space. And then what is it worth? It's not if you can't use it and enjoy it.
Exactly. And, if people are feeling in a space, because it is all about sort of comfort and the idea that something makes you feel comfortable. So it's not just like comfort and being able to sit on a comfortable sofa. It's like the general comfort of being in somebody's space because they make you feel comfortable.
Right.
And I do feel like your work is again, like Liz was saying, I think comfort is a simple word, but it's so precise in this, that this very English layered look, it's truly comfortable. Nothing feels hard. And I want that. So how do I layer up was going to be my next question. Because
layer up.
I feel, just like you, I'm sure you start again with the good bones and then you have an empty space. And now you have to make it beautiful. And, how do I add layers without making it feel too busy? Because none of your spaces feel too busy.
That's interesting. Well, I guess it's about a really well thought out, sort of general arrangement of furniture. I mean, that's key.
Right.
So the idea that with every chair, should be a lamp and a table. So that's sort of important. And again, the proximity and the heights to the furniture. So nobody sort of sat on the wrong chair that's too high within a sort of conversation. The idea that you might sort of create zones in a room. So with it not being too sort of static, but creating little sort of conversation areas. I guess the layered look, we always talk about the layered look. How do you get the layered look?
Oh my gosh, we just want it.
But
I know.
guess it's about sort of, I mentioned deep sofas, layered rugs, lots of lamps, different lamps at different heights, I mean, ceiling
you're not
lighting
matching them. You're not you're not matching lampshades, lamps per se.
I mean,
No.
it's like,
You say it so obvious.
I think it's about, I mean, you wouldn't want, how would I say this? I guess it's about not being too pristine, too themed, and too rigid. Does that sort of make
Yeah.
No, it makes complete sense. I'm like, gosh, that's what I feel like this podcast has been so wonderful about, is trying to teach people, again, that guttural feeling that is so, like you said, it's a feeling. And kind of holding their hand to try to be like, how do you get that feeling? How do we describe it so you can understand? And you've done a great job, but I totally, I'm with you.
I think that, but I mean, isn't everything in design and it's sort of about collecting? Ultimately, if you really sort of crystallize it, it's just about what, as a client, as a collector, as a person, what is it that truly interests you? So lots of people have sort of fixed ideas about things because actually a lot of people don't have the confidence to say, I like, this color, or they don't feel sort of confident in their choice. And actually, if you just have real sort of confidence in what you feel, in your conviction, it's like a gut reaction to something. I mean, I just instinctively know when I love something because I cannot think about anything else. Like I know when, I mean, just minutes before I came up here, a colleague that I'm working together with on something, she said, "Oh, by the way, the clients selected this wallpaper out of all the wallpapers." And I said, "Well, God, out of all the wallpapers, why did you ever show her that one? It's the wrong," it felt like a bedroom wallpaper and it just felt incorrect. And there was a sort of misunderstanding, but I instinctively knew, even though the client had selected it from a little digital board, I'd have to have a conversation with them to say, actually, it's a total misunderstanding here, and what you thought is going to be right isn't right in the context of the overall scheme, which is a challenging thing to
Yeah.
especially when they really like it.
Of course.
But I think that going to your point about the layering of rooms is also just about legitimately layering and allowing them to evolve over time. Because ultimately, what is time? It's like time is set by an installation date commercially, but when it's your own home,
Yeah.
you're not
No,
really
you're constantly
dictated by
evolving.
time, are you?
Yeah.
You're just sort of always finding new things, you're moving things. I know from my own example, I've now learnt to live with picture rails because I would constantly move pictures about, and there would be holes like
Brilliant.
Swiss cheese in the walls. Um, so in a roundabout way, I guess I'm saying that it legitimately evolves, it legitimately layers with
Layers come with time.
confidence in what you genuinely like, because we all know what we genuinely like, push comes to shove, don't we? I think.
I should hope so, but
Yeah.
it's just the matter of feeling confident, like
Yeah.
you said earlier, about making that decision and showing everyone that that's what you like for when they come over to your home, right?
Yeah.
So how has your own renovation shown what you like?
Yeah, so I've just finished our flat in London, my husband and I, and he works in textiles. So, the two of
Ugh.
us together, there's a lot to agree on, and we tend to have a
There's a lot to
rule that
choose from.
um, and we generally have a rule that if, one doesn't like it, then we don't go for it. I think, again, to labour the point, but I feel very authentic in saying it, that it is truly representative of the things that we love.
Mhm.
It's a very, very small flat in sort of southeast London, and we've had to, fit a lot in to a
Mhm.
relatively small converted space. Um, and I think we made small architectural changes, like just moving a window 30
Mhm.
centimeters to the left sort of created a whole new sort of axis for the kitchen, which then, sort of impacted the dining room. And then by removing a small vestibule to a bathroom, allowed a much bigger, sort of shower room inside.
Mhm.
So those really small tweaks made a much greater sense of sort of the space. But I guess I'm talking about that from a sort of layout perspective. But your question was, just remind me your question again.
Oh, sure. Just how did you find your own personal style in your current renovation?
I think that again, we had lived in our flat for about 3 or 4 years, and interestingly, when people came afterwards, they said, "Well, I can see what you've done, but it doesn't actually feel fundamentally that different." Which I actually was really pleased about, because I don't
Mhm.
feel like it. I think we've done the architectural changes, we've changed the hard finishes, we've done a new kitchen, we've done a new bathroom, we've redecorated throughout, but ultimately the spirit of the house is still the same. The paintings are still the same.
Mhm.
We've upholstered some other pieces of furniture. We found new pieces of antique furniture. Actually, if anything, we've slightly become more, I don't want to say minimalist because that is really not who we are, but we've become more edited,
Mhm.
actually. Um, and we've really focused on the good pieces,
Mhm.
rather than more of the less good.
Mhm.
But I think it perfectly embodies our interest in textiles, um, in both antique textiles and textiles that, we have at Guy Goodfellow as part of the collection,
Mhm.
but also textiles in Philippe's company that he works for. Um, so it's a perfect harmony of the antique and the new, but nothing really looks too new in terms of the
Mhm.
textiles.
Mhm.
I guess there's an underlying, what I call sort of slightly dirty color to it all,
Mhm.
because I think that that is the ochres and the deep greens and the sort of, the deep reds, like that's what sort of characterizes
Mhm.
that apartment, and it really works. Um, and I think that it works to show what interests us.
Mhm.
Um, and I
Did you find that editing process challenging?
um
Or were there moments of tension within?
Well, I think ultimately you're sort of governed by, a relatively small space.
Mhm.
And it is, by no means, as I say, minimalist was totally the wrong word to use. It is still jam-packed full, I mean, of, sort of even down to over all the doors, for example, there was a good sort of 60, 70 centimeters between the tops of the architraves to the ceilings, actually more in some cases. And so we had these sort of cantilevered, bookshelves built above all of the doors that you would then have runs of books in
Mhm.
nearly every room because it was a way to not have too many bookcases. It meant we could have more furniture, and then you would just have
Mhm.
all of these sort of
Mhm.
books at sort of spring points above the doors. So it was a clever way of basically, creating storage, but
Mhm.
actually it's very beautiful and it's very necessary in those rooms. Um, but I think naturally the editing process often comes because you you've sort of the time has come to sort of pass something on or to get
Mhm.
rid of it, or you see something differently, or something else piques your interest. I think that some things last forever and some things have a sort of expiration date depending on the
Yeah.
object. Like there are paintings that I know I will always have and I will give to somebody, one day, but there are sort of other things that I fall in love with and sort of fall out of love with. And then I, you know, sort of give them to somebody else or
I wanted to talk a little bit about English country home style.
Mhm,
And I have a feeling that that means probably a little bit something different to everyone.
mhm.
How would you define it? And what are some of the misconceptions you think that we have over here in America about that? I feel like it's very much on trend right now, but how
To emulate the
to
style.
emulate both, I think both interiors and gardens and, I think a lot of folks here are looking for that level of comfort.
Mhm.
Um, but what are some key parts of an English country home that would define it for you?
It's less a formula and more a feeling. I think I said that before. Um, the idea that it's accumulated and sort of never themed. Um, the idea that it's sort of lived in and not too pristine. The idea that actually it's just legitimately evolved over time. Um, I think how does that differ from American homes?
I
I
guess you mentioned themed. Like, I don't want anything that I do that feels British to feel themed in my own home. I think that that's probably a key where, how do we bring in. Sorry, I'm fumbling now. It's trying
I'm
trying
glad you are.
No, but trying to bring in heritage and comfort. But what are some additional themes that you see? And we can skip this whole thing if
No.
because we have
No,
talked about so much.
I'm good on this. I'm good on this. Let me just see if I've got any, because I did make a couple of notes because I thought, my God, I'm never going to be able to get through this otherwise. In America, my sense is that you sort of take a project and it's like the whole project.
Mhm.
Um, Here, I think you sort of sometimes you take it. I mean, more often than not, we do the whole project, but sometimes you sort of get these little splintered off rooms that
Yeah,
you're
like a little
asked to sort of
sprinkle. You'll get a
to sort
one
of
little space.
help with. I mean,
Okay.
nobody in England ever really says that they sort of employ an interior designer. They always say, "I've had help," which is
I
an
love.
interesting sort of idea in its sense. Whereas, of course, in America, you it's a it's a it's like a key performance indicator to
Mhm.
sort of your status, your wealth, or it's like a particular car or something. You put a great amount of integrity and respect in decorators.
Yes.
I love
That's
that.
true.
You really do. You put them on a pedestal. You give them the credit and the kudos that they require. I mean, and it's not that I, need to be sort of celebrated at all, but I'm just saying that I think that's a
different
sort of
way.
difference. And I think here, we just have a slightly more sort of less matched, pared back approach to decorating. Maybe that doesn't feel so constructed, or maybe the idea that we don't want it to feel constructed. It's sort of deep. It's like the perfectly imperfect. Whereas if I think about sort of, an American client of mine, like everything has to be very, very perfect. She doesn't want any sort of imperfections. In fact, in their London house, sometimes she just can't get her head around that we put in a fabric that feels like it turns the whole thing on its head. Like it's what Guy would call like a shot in the arm. It's like she can't quite get her head around it. And we've tried it, and she would rather it just felt a little bit more harmonious with the rest of the theme. Whereas we like things to feel like they've almost been dragged into the room. Like scales slightly off.
You have a lot of heritage.
The patterns slightly off. Like it feels like, again, it might have just come in at a later stage.
Her great aunt gave it to her, and it was from her estate in the south of. We
love great aunt Mildred. She's got taste. But I think you said the word eccentric, and I think allowing for a piece of like eccentricity is something that I think we're not as accustomed to. But I love that idea of allowing space for eccentricity.
Yeah, and I think that also goes back to the advice, or my I say advice, like recommendation, my thoughts on like freedom and self-expression. And if you can only say to somebody to sort of feel freedom and self-expression and what they really, really want, if you can really tease that out, then there are eccentricities there. It's often people won't tell you what they want because they're scared of what you're going to say.
Right. Those are the parts we're shy about.
And you think you are as Americans, or as?
I don't think I am personally.
No.
You come to my house, you'll know me in the first as soon as you walk in the door.
But isn't that really what we want to do? I mean, isn't that that's what design
that
is
is
all
the
about?
end goal, right?
You actually want to open the door, feel relaxed, feel invited into a conversation, feel at home, and feel that you have an understanding about the person that lives there. I mean, that's what I want. And I mean, I guess that's the difference between this great sort of debate about design and, when people, and it's not the work that we do, but when people talk about wanting to live in sort of, or emulate hotels I think we're kind of moving away from that now ultimately, but, this idea that it's sort of homogenized, it lacks identity. You could be in London, but you could be in Doha, or you could be in LA. Like, actually, it all looks the same.
Right.
Does that sort of make sense?
Oh, yeah. You don't know. They make it so you don't, anybody can stay. You don't know who's staying there. And and when it comes to a home, it's not what we expect. We want to know.
But of course, many people do want that in a home. It's just they wouldn't come to us for it.
Oh, no. You are wildly too fabulous. I need to know, what is your most hated American design? Like, something that every
trend?
Yes, that you're like, bleh.
Something through the ages.
It could be anything. There's got to be something that you hate about American design.
Oh, I don't know. God, give me a cue. What should I be hated? I sort of never really thought about that.
That's good. That means
Does
you
anything
are,
sort of offend me? I don't
yeah,
know.
offended. Yeah. Is there something that offends you? How about the way we
Or just in general.
yeah, we strip every finish off every antique from Europe, and we're just dry finish, like just letting them
Is that
bleach
still
them.
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. Because
I found one.
you know, I've sort of I guess over the years have worked with people again that have that sort of pristine polish.
Mhm.
And I once had a client that famously we were looking at a Queen Anne sort of games table or something. And I went to the antique dealer in London, and the games table was perfect. I mean, it was just absolutely brilliant. The style, the everything, and but it was pretty beaten and battered. And you know, at the time, the client sort of said, "Well, you know, it's great, Stephen, but we'll have to refinish it." So send it off to wherever and we'll
Mhm.
refinish it. And when I sort of went to look at it again, and I said to the dealer, well, look, you know, it's ultimately a bit disheveled looking. And the client's saying, we're going to have to refinish it. And he said, oh, darling, just, you know, just make yourself a new one. Don't spoil it for others. Let somebody else have it. And I sort of thought that was a really good way of sort of, you know, because the idea that most people love the patina of time, you know,
Mhm.
the sort of
Yeah.
the layers, the damage, you know, the whatever it is, it sort of tells the story. It's the chronology of that piece.
Mhm.
Um, and so to sort of start stripping it off does seem a little perverse.
Kind of
Mhm.
So
especially for a games table. Like,
yeah,
just think
because
how
people
many
have
games
played
have
on
been
that for
played if
hundreds
it's
of years.
really battered.
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't actually buy it, and we found something sort of appropriately sort of more polished looking. And somebody would have enjoyed that games table, but to think that, you know, one might take 250 years off the top of it does seem a little
Yeah.
distorted.
I mean, I think that might be it. That we're just like there's an not everyone, but of course this perfectionism to it all. Like
Yeah.
you said, it's got to be perfect. I mean, and that goes back to some of the first things we said again, that the whole layered look is so hard for us because that's old. That's been used. That's, you know, which is such a sad way of thinking of things sometimes.
But I think that rooms also need humor. You know, they have, and goes back to the eccentricity. If everything
Mhm.
feels like it's too sort of, you know, too constructed, then like,
Mhm.
where's the humor? Where's that little piece of ugly in the
Mhm.
Yeah.
room? Um, or the funny card or the naff gift that somebody's
Mhm.
given you, because it wouldn't mean anything to you, but it means something to me.
Mhm.
Right.
And again, that's those elements of personality that, you know, come through, and I think set rooms apart.
Yeah. I love that. So let's all just work to embrace the imperfect, be a little bit eccentric.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that's perfect.
Well, we do have a decorating dilemma, if you'd be so kind as to help our listener out.
Hmm.
Today's decorating dilemma comes from Sarah. I love your podcast, and I've listened to more episodes than I can count. Thanks, Sarah. My decorating dilemma involves an 1895 summer cottage on Martha's Vineyard. We're
For Steven, so you know, that's really old for American standards, just so we're clear.
True. We're giving our second floor a long needed update. We have 5 tired bedrooms full of mixed secondhand furniture. The bedroom doors are off a long, narrow, dark center hallway that runs the full length of the house with no windows. I am excited to update the bedrooms with fresh looks, paint, wallpaper, rugs, and new furniture. My dilemma is, how do I treat the hallway? And is it important to tie the bedrooms to the hallway and to each other? My thought is to pick a fun wallpaper and runner for the hallway and then pull colors from the paper into decorating the bedrooms. I'm obsessed with all the wonderful wallpapers available now and could easily get carried away, but I also thought about using some of the in the bedrooms if it's not overkill. There's a skylight in the hallway that provides some natural light. I love color and wallpaper, but wonder how far can I go? Should the bedrooms tie together somehow, or should they all have their own distinct personality? Thank you for your expert help from Sarah S.
Wow.
So she's included pictures of her house and a few of her living rooms, so we can get the overall feel for her cottage vibe that she's striving for. So, gosh, I think this is right up your alley.
Well, it's a very beautiful house and quite a dilemma. I mean, it's quite the project.
Right?
I think that, so I think that the thing that really, what was the point? The point about the skylight. So I think that from the image, I can see, definitely using the skylight to floodlight, because I think that she said that on the corridor there is no natural light.
Right.
I can't quite work out where it is in the hallway. It looks like it's above the staircase, and I don't know if you could almost create within the lights. You could almost drop like a lantern or something within it on like a sort of crossbar or something. So that would give an interesting light at night and a sort of focal point. I think that a joyful sort of wallpaper would be, and the runner can really transform it. But I don't think that the bedrooms need to match, although I think they should relate. So I think that in any project, I think a sort of conversation between rooms is really important. So the idea that nothing is too jarring, nothing seems out of place to the next room. I mean, I know that some people have like they say, oh, well, I want this type of room, or like this particular, like I think about a project that we're working on at the moment, and, ultimately it's a Regency townhouse in London, but the basement looks like it's something, entirely contemporary, or, it's high deco in a way. It's sort of different from it. So I think it's fine in those sort of isolated places. But I think here, if this is sort of a guest wing of bedrooms, then a conversation, the idea that they're sort of sisters rather than twins, is a kind of good way of looking at it. So is there a thread that you can run through from the hallway? Is there sort of color that you can take through and relate into the bedrooms? It looks to be a rather narrow corridor, and I wonder whether or not you can create a sense of sort of rhythm and balance with a very narrow console. It doesn't look like you could really put any chairs, but is it a very narrow console with a mirror? Could you put some, very discreet, sort of quite shallow wall lights? Would be, I think, a way to sort of generate interest. And if it was a linear hallway, if you could create sort of, a console on one wall and then something on the other wall, and it sort of moves through in that direction, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, that does. I think you're right. Like a mirror at the end of the hallway where she now has a painting.
Yeah.
Might be a great way to bounce some of the light that's coming in from the skylight.
I think so. And, you could have a very sort of shallow cantilever demi-lune table with a lamp, maybe a vase. I think it's, there's a lot can be achieved there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Maybe some, if you don't use the lantern over the skylight and you just let the light flood through, then maybe creating a sort of series of smaller lanterns as you move through. I guess it depends with anything. You have something in your mind, and in more cases than not, it evolves. So it doesn't just evolve stylistically, it like legitimately evolves. And you think that it's just a lick of paint and a bit of wallpaper. But again, it's about getting the bones right. If you're going to wallpaper here and decorate, then why not get an electrician to come in and run some extra runs
Some
for wall
sconces.
lights, for sconces, for a picture
Mhm.
light. I mean, a picture would look great at the end of the hall above
A picture light with a yes.
Yeah. I think that's really great. And I think to your point too, like really just going really fun
Mm,
and making that hallway a bit of a destination.
yeah,
And it's unclear on whether each one of those 5 bedrooms on this corridor are occupied full time, if
yeah.
they're for guests. Um, I mean, you could just have so much fun.
Yeah, I think that, in a hallway like that, you sort of want to create a sense of lingering.
Mm.
So the idea that it doesn't become a thoroughfare to a final destination. There's somewhere that you might linger, that you might look at. You could have a collection of pictures, something to sort of pique your curiosity as you walk through. I mean, that just makes life much more interesting.
I love that idea.
And what I do love about an upstairs hallway too is it can I feel like be even more personal, like you said with the pictures. Like this is if it is just your family staying up there, why would you not, to your point, put the humorous things in the children's art or something special,
Yeah,
like random.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
it's
not
a little bit more private. It's a little bit more personal. We just recently did a project in the country, and we sort of redid this sort of spiral staircase, which sort of is on one of the back wings of the house. And again, it's leading to the children's bedrooms. And it was a really good place to actually focus the family photography. So
Mhm.
we have this very beautiful staircase, a spiral staircase, and they have a lot of this work, but it didn't seem appropriate to sort of put it anywhere else that wasn't in their bedrooms. So we just had everything in black and white, everything mounted in these beautiful frames. And then as you walk through, it sort of celebrates the family, really. It
Yeah.
is personal, but you wouldn't want it in your entrance hall. That would seem too personal.
Right.
Yeah, because when you have
Well-
guests that you're not that close with and you're like, no, I didn't need you to see my
Well, actually, in the house I grew up in you walked in the door and you were in the kitchen, and then there was a long, narrow hallway that took you to the dining room and to the living room. And that's actually where my mom did a gallery wall with all of our very kind of personal, like, photos of, like, a funny, like, picture of kids laughing or, family photos or things like that. And invariably, that's the one place that everyone would linger.
Yeah.
Like, when you had
There
new
you go.
people coming in, they really wanted to stop there, and they got a sense of who we were as a family. And
Exactly.
yeah,
It's sort of
that's kind of what
storytelling
this
again.
makes me feel like. It's
Yeah.
that same long, narrow, but I love the idea of making it a destination space that, yeah, how wonderful.
I know. I think a wallpaper, some sconces, some pictures. This will be so
Yeah.
fun to meander through on your
Yeah.
way to the rooms.
And I think it's about scale there, and it's sort of difficult to get. But I mean, everything is about the scale. I mean, get it wrong, and you can feel underwhelmed. It can feel too twee. It can feel like a doll's house. I mean, scale is everything in both pattern and furniture. So picking the right thing is key.
Okay, I wanna touch on one more thing.
Mm.
She talked about the rooms pulling colors from the wallpaper, or do they need to match? And what is your thought on that? Like, really does she have, the pink room, the blue room, the green room? Like, what are your thoughts about kind of theming rooms or just having them be kind of neutral or
No, I
pulling
think
colors
theming
in?
rooms is lovely. I think that's a really, if you have a desire to have a pink room, a red room, not a red room, a yellow room, but I mean that's fine. But I think that you have to find something that connects them all. So if you look at, the wallpaper, if you find the sort of wallpaper that really makes your heart sing for this corridor, um, then and you sort of laid out all the other sort of rooms opposite, off of it, then you need something to sort of unify it, and maybe it's a color, maybe it's a pattern. Um, I think that I would lean into it rather than retreat. Because otherwise, I think if you sort of try to just make something that is inconspicuous, you won't linger.
Well, this is such great advice. Good luck, Sarah. Send us pictures when you get it all done. We'd love to see. Steven, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Can you let all of our listeners know where they can find you and follow you?
Thank you. Yeah. So the interior and architectural website is guygoodfellow.com, and the Instagram is Guy Goodfellow, and our fabrics and wallpapers is Guy Goodfellow Collection on Instagram, and my handle is Steven Rodel.
Thank you so much. Well,
Thank
that's
you.
our show.
Well, very nice to be a part of it. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And that's our show. You can find all of the show notes on our blog, howtodecorate.com/podcast.
To send in a decorating dilemma, email your questions to podcast@ballarddesigns.net so we can help you with your space.
And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at Ballard Designs.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Until next time, happy
Happy
decorating.
decorating.